Hey everyone, it's Anthony Ramos. Okay, so Netflix's new reality series, Deaf You, follows a group of deaf and hard of hearing college students as they navigate their love lives and so much more. Nyle DiMarco is an executive producer, and he joins me today with one of the show's stars, Renate Rose. Hey Nyle, hey Renate, how are you?
Hi,
Hey, doing well, doing well. Thanks. Thanks so much for having us on the
I'm
show.
doing good.
My pleasure. So, okay, I have to tell you, this show is out on Netflix. I'm already hooked. It's very juicy. I'm loving this kind of reality format. Nyle, for you, I know you, as an executive producer, you also went to the school that is at the center of this show. What does it mean for you to kind of see this show finally come to life?
Yes, I was a student at GLAAD myself in 2007. And now to see this show actually become a reality and to be able to tell deaf people's stories in an authentic way is incredible. For me, it's so powerful. I've spent some time watching the series, and during my time, I have laughed, I have cried. Finally, I'm seeing representation of myself. It's very empowering.
And I know it was important for you to have queer, obviously LGBTQ representation. And Renata, I want to come to you because, lots of a very interesting storyline for you. You're kind of putting your love life all out there. You identify as pansexual, I believe. Is that right? So what was this experience like for you?
It was incredible. Do you mean my experience as someone who identifies as a pansexual?
Or just kind of, being on this show and navigating, your love life and kind of just putting it all out there.
Really, it was a very frightening experience for me because to be vulnerable, it comes with risks. People could possibly judge me, or I mean, it's easy to have your mind spinning, wondering what people are going to say and what's going to happen. But really, I'm really glad that I shared my story because it gave me a chance to really look at myself and to see my relationships from a different perspective. So I'm really grateful for what I have.
What's the latest with you and Taylor?
We're still together. We're now living together, and we're still in DC currently. So yeah, we're both doing graduate school simultaneously. So it's really crazy. You're juggling work and school. And now with the Deaf U premiere, it's our lives have become really crazy.
Well, congratulations. That's great to hear you're still together. Nyle, I'm going to come back
Thank
over to
you.
you. Oh, of course. Nyle, what would it have meant to you if there was a show like Deaf U when you were growing up? What would that have meant to you?
Wow. Um, I would say two things. That the deaf identity is something that I dreamt of, but is real. Oftentimes as a deaf child, my dreams were quite limited because society told me and tells deaf people every day that we can't function in the hearing world. That my dreams of being a reality TV producer, a model, an actor would have never been realized because a hearing society told me that. Deaf really shows representation within our community that there is no one right way to be deaf, which I think would have given me so much more confidence in my future and my dreams. And also with the LGBTQ representation. So many of the things that I might have struggled with growing up, would have definitely been relieved after seeing the show. To know that there is representation within the deaf community would have been huge for me. I think I would have felt stronger and more empowered to tell my story after seeing it on the big screen. Because seeing it on the big screen validates the audience at home in knowing that folks like us exist and that we should embrace who we are. I mean, Renata's story is so incredibly powerful, and I so wish I would have had a Renata when I was younger, because I think I probably would have come out eons ago.
No, and that's exactly right. Representation is everything. And that's why I'm glad we are working so hard, to make sure that these projects are amplified and get made. So first, thank you so much for, being a part of making this. So much, I learned so much watching this series. I think one of the things that I found really interesting was this idea of people not being deaf enough. Renata, tell me a little bit about those kind of conversations that happen within communities of deaf and hard of hearing people.
That kind of feeling is very common in the deaf community because, deafness is not always, a standard. It varies. There's different ways that people become deaf. They may become later in life. They may have been born deaf. Some are born hearing and then, become deaf at a young age. It varies. So our journeys and our deaf identities, they always come up as complex. They're varying. There's different nuances. So a conversation has started about being deaf enough. Why is that a subject? Do we really need to improve on that and make sure that all deaf people? I'm sorry, can you see me?
Better.
It's very thought-provoking. Figuring out what our journey is.
Yeah, and I think, it reminds me of a little bit with the LGBTQ community, some of even the struggles and levels of acceptance that people have within our own community. It's almost like we should just really support each other no matter, what the differences are within our own community. Nyle, I'll jump back over to you.
Yes.
One of the other interesting things is this idea of like the elite that comes up. Nyle, is that something, well, first off, for anyone out there that hasn't seen that, if you kind of explain what that means, and was that something that you encountered during your time in school, like some of these kids are?
I mean, full disclosure, I would be considered elite, sure. I would be considered quote unquote elite. In my own perspective, it specifically refers to people who come from a stronger language background, from a deaf family and have gone to a deaf school, for example. And it's indicative of the fact that they've had access to sign language from an early age and through their childhood. Which really involves, three facets. We went to the same school, many of us, like Tessa, for example, right? I've known Tessa since she was born, right? We had a chance to really grow up together. And so, of course, we developed strong bonds with one another. Her and her group of friends have known each other since their kindergarten days. And you can see that her family and her community really works to preserve sign language in our culture. So, of course, it's tough to break into that clique or that crowd, if you will, right? They're very tight and connected, and so it might seem like you can't. But interestingly enough, Cheyenne actually recently posted on Instagram just a week ago that she realized that she had weaponized the term elite, and also her comments that she perhaps didn't feel deaf enough, right? Because the deaf community is made up of so many various different groups of people, and it just goes to show that we can really fit in anywhere. I mean, Cheyenne grew up in an all-deaf family, but she went to a mainstream school or a standard public school, which is another factor that's really key to consider. But then we see Daquan, right? Now, before, Daquan was on the show and I was working with him, he said, I don't feel like I'm deaf enough. And for me, it was really key to show him that 95% of deaf kids in America are exactly like him. They're born to hearing parents, and most of those parents don't sign. They don't go to deaf schools. They don't have any access to American Sign Language, right? And so he really is the majority of our population. So I really think it's key that when we look at the elites, right, that we look at also their ability to be a mama bear a little bit, right? They see that sign language is on the brink of extinction, and they want to make sure that we're preserving our culture and our mores and our traditions, but also our language and who we are as a community. The deaf community lives on a spectrum, right? And I think we can see that elitism behavior if we recognize our positioning and if we really analyze the full picture.
So well said, and thank you very much for explaining that, because it was something that I watched and, completely wasn't aware of. And I think a lot of people are going to learn so much from this series. Renata, what does it mean to you to be working with Nyle DiMarco, who is someone who is so passionate about LGBTQ rights, but also obviously so passionate about, equality for deaf people and furthering education? What does it mean to kind of get to work with him on this project?
Really, I was very honored. It was inspiring. I mean, I would have never imagined that I would have had an opportunity to work with Nyle and be on Netflix. So, I mean, it really feels surreal. Yes, I really am glad that I got a chance to show my story and to be involved with some LGBTQ representation in the show.
What do we think about I know you can't even think about the next step, but season 2, maybe? I want to know what happens next.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we're hoping.
I hope so too.
I mean, I think it's so incredibly interesting that the hearing audience has been amazed by the show. It feels as though they've had an entrance point into an entirely new world. And, the deaf community's response has been that we've only, in fact, scratched the surface. So much more, so many more layers that we have to peel away and to really explore. We haven't even given the hearing audience at home everything yet. You'll just have to wait and see.
Definitely more to come. Nyle, I was just thinking, I was sitting here talking to you, obviously a winner of Dancing with the Stars, America's Next Top Model. Now that Tyra is over at Dancing with the Stars, it's like your worlds colliding. Do you think we're ever going to see 2 same-sex people dance on that show? I just suddenly thought about that. I was like, you are the expert on both of those things.
Funny enough, both America's Next Top Model and Dancing with the Stars were cycle 22 when I won them. And then Tyra, had, become the host of Dancing with the Stars. And it really just feels like things, were falling into place like they were meant to be. During Dancing with the Stars, I had made history essentially with being the deaf contestant, but also being the first same-sex couple to ever dance on the show. I hope to see that continues through the seasons, and I really do hope to see a same-sex couple to come. It's interesting. It's interesting because we had actually hosted a dance, the Argentinian tango, which begins with 2 male dancers. And historically, that is the tradition. And it was done in order to impress women and attract their attention. But now it seems to be a bit taboo. And I'm like, well, what was wrong in the first place? Why can't we go back to that? But of course, toxic masculinity steps in, and here we are.
Yes, well, fingers crossed. We definitely want to see more of that. And I can't wait to see more of Deaf U. And reminder, everyone out there, Deaf U is available to stream and watch and eat up. You'll love it on Netflix right now. And hopefully season 2 will be right around the corner. Nyle, Renata, so nice to see you both. Congratulations, and we'll talk really soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.